Thank you, KCIW listeners. You are tuning in to the Quality Living with Peaceful Support show. If you have never heard of it before, it's really fun. You're going to want to turn up the volume, maybe pull your car over, get out there, watch the sunset, and just have a listen. If you want to participate, we encourage participation here on the Quality Living show. Phone number 541-661-4098. And if you're not really a vocal person, you want to email us, please do contact@kciw.org. That is our email. And at any time, 24/7, you're welcome to contact the station. And it is a volunteer-based, nonprofit, donation accepted radio station here on 100.7. With the Quality Living show, it's a program where we invite the community to participate and involve themselves as much as they wish. Whether you're a doctor, a school teacher, a student, a sports fanatic, anyone and everyone is welcome to enjoy the Quality Living show and meet us here in the studio. And so we often have different guests of all different calibers, and we do our best to see everybody as equal and support them in their path and their gifts that they're providing the community for peaceful support. Any questions? Again, please do call. We encourage it. And here we are with one of our guests today who's joined us in the studio. We're super lucky to have this lovely person with us, Mr. Tim Rundel, the city manager of Brookings, Oregon. Hey, Tim.
Hello, Amanda.
Woohoo, you made it in.
I made it in.
Awesome. Yeah. And you made it to Brookings at such a pivotal time.
Yeah, it was. It was, the timing couldn't be better for me as well as for the community. And it just all came together at a really, really good time for both sides on this.
Right. Yeah, good. Because a lot of our listeners, they really like to learn about who we have in the studio and about your story. And so where did you reside before this, or what's your little bit of a backstory about you?
Sure. Well, I grew up in the Ozark Mountains in northwest Arkansas. And the Boston Mountains. So I'm an Arkansan, I guess you could say, up until high school, and then moved to Oklahoma in high school. Was there, my parents were blue-collar folks. My dad was a roofer. He just passed away a couple years ago. My mom, who's still with us, was a waitress. So I joke, bad backs run in our family when your parents are roofers and waitresses. So, but yeah, I grew up, I was the oldest. I'm the oldest of 8 kids.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Mom.
Exactly. So, it was interesting. We never could have any nice things in our house, my mom said, because we broke them all the time. 7 boys, 1 girl. So,
whoa.
Yeah, big family. Then decided to go to college. Was kind of a late bloomer, really didn't get serious until I was about 20. And then decided, after delivering pizzas for a couple of years, thinking maybe I should pursue something a little bit more challenging, and decided to do that. But worked in the food service industry from the time I was 13 all the way to 23. So have a lot of respect for those in that industry. And so I went to college, kind of floundered around, didn't know what I wanted to do. And on a dare, decided to try out for a play. So I had been a radio DJ for a top 40 radio station for a couple of summers.
Interesting.
There in Oklahoma. That was on a dare as well. So anyway, I auditioned for Grease and wanted to be the dance DJ in Grease. Got the part, and then a couple of weeks later, one of the main characters quit the show, and I quickly got a promotion to one of the other. And I told Dr. Stewart, I don't know how to sing, I don't know how to dance, and she said, "Well, neither do I. Let's have fun." So and so we did. I did that, and then got the acting bug and was involved heavily in the arts, and got out of school in 1990. Ended up marrying my college sweetheart, who is the mother of my two beautiful sons. And so we moved to Oklahoma City. I was in the Air Force and Oklahoma Air National Guard for about 6 years, and then decided I was kind of wanting to do something a little bit more. I was making great money. I was in the wireless business in the mid 90s when cell phones cost $1,500 and you got to talk for 60 minutes for $60. It was very expensive. And, but just wasn't real happy in the industry and decided to go into something else. I wanted to still serve. I still had that bug from my military service and some other stuff to do some things. So I went back to school at the encouragement of an uncle who was a city manager and got my master's in public administration from the University of Oklahoma and got my first gig in 2001. So I'm in my 24th year of doing this. And I've had a great career. It's changed a lot over the past, I would say probably the past 10 or 12 years, it's changed quite a bit with social media and how, our country is divided on a lot of things. And unfortunately, sometimes that kind of bleeds into local politics as well, and which it shouldn't be because, being a city manager, it should be, it's bipartisan. It's, there's no political affiliation if you're a city manager or even city council person. So anyway, but it's been a very fulfilling, very rewarding career. And I was in Weed, California for 4.5 years as the city manager there. Started my first day on the job was in 2020, the first day that the governor shut the state down for the pandemic. It was my first day on the job. So
yes,
yeah, welcome to California. So I did that and had a few bumps along the way, a few substantial wildfires that really devastated our community, but we were able to rise up and push forward and do a lot. But came to Brookings quite a bit because when I was there, I asked folks around there because, being in, my house is at the base of Mount Shasta, beautiful area. But, it can get warm there and then in the winters can get very harsh with the snow. And so I wanted a place to escape and Brookings was that place. So escaped here multiple times during my tenure there in Weed and said to myself, if the job ever came open, I would definitely apply. And
wow.
And by golly, it did back in early this year and went through the whole process and of all the interviews and vetting and all that good stuff and was named the city manager back in July. And my first day here was July 22nd. So, and been here ever since.
Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, man. That's quite an experience.
Yeah.
And a transition.
Coming from Siskiyou County where, lots of wildfires and it's a beautiful area. I love that. The people are great there. It's a beautiful part of the state. It's just, I was evacuated 3 times in 18 months. Talking about full blown leaving your home for days and wondering if it's still going to be there when you get back. And, those type of things. That's tough on the psyche a little bit.
Totally.
And just decided to, come to a beach community instead. So, and I love it here. It's been great. It's been really good.
And so for those who are just tuning in, we're talking with Tim Rundel, our city manager here in Brookings, Oregon. And for some of us who've never really had interest or idea of how a state operates or a city or a government, some of us just never learned about it. They just skipped that part. They went, and had pizza with their friends at high school and they just didn't go to class. So can you give the listeners a little bit of a background of the level of operation of just kind of how it works for?
Sure. I often tell folks, most of us are pretty familiar with how a school is run. You have a school board. They hire a school superintendent who's over, the elementary schools, the middle schools, the high schools, and the teachers and everything else. Very similar in that, if you look at it from that standpoint, with the exception of a instead of a school board, we have a council and a mayor. And typically, most of the places I've worked, the most council members I've ever worked for were 9, and I had one that was 7, but most of them are 5-member boards. And if you kind of look at it this way, Amanda, these folks are basically the board of directors for a multi-million-dollar company. If you look at it from that standpoint, and they have to hire somebody to run the company, and that's typically a CEO, a chief executive officer. That's kind of what a city manager is, except my main duties and functions are to make sure that the citizens are provided quality services for their utilities, primarily water, sewer. Some cities, they even run the sanitation as well. And then public safety is a big thing as well. Fire, police, making sure our citizens are safe and, that we have people here that are, looking out for us, both on a criminal aspect and as far as, with the fire department, being there in case of a bad accident or a house fire or a wildfire. So those are the ones. And then I'm also heavily involved in the administration side of it. We have, every city I've worked for, we have a finance department that's in charge of essentially keeping the books. And we are scrutinized heavily. We have to undergo multiple audits, at least a minimum of 1 audit per year with an audit team. And those can be very stressful as well. But that kind of keeps everything in check as far as that goes. So on the administration side, you also have a city clerk who's over all the record keeping and that's that sort of thing. And then we have our public works department. Those are the men and women that are out there making sure that the streets are paved. They're making sure that the water lines are patched up, the sewer lines are flowing right. Most people, I always say, if you've never come to City Hall upset about something, then you lived a pretty charmed life, because generally something will happen at some point where we'll bring you to City Hall. But a lot of people, they're really busy. As long as they've got running water and they're going to flush their toilet and take showers, and the trash gets picked up and their streets are paved, they're good to go. And they rarely see us. But in the event that something happens, we're here for that. So. And I've got a really good mayor and council here. Again, essentially a board of directors that, selected me to be the next chief executive officer of this operations. And like any city, we have a lot of challenges here in Brookings, but just like, most of it's aging infrastructure, which is about 95% of all the other cities around America. Yeah, because a lot of this stuff is, believe it or not, I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago and they were talking about how their child lived in, I believe it was in Kansas somewhere, and then they had to do some sewer line replacements. And the sewer lines were made of wood. It was wood sewer lines. In fact, if you come to City Hall where you pay your utility bill over there, there's this display, and there's an old wooden sewer line that used to be utilized at one point. So imagine the durability of a wooden sewer line, and with the earth shifting constantly and those things. But we figured things out a little bit better technology now, and making sure that those your water and your sewer work effectively and your streets are paved. So lots of things going on behind the scenes. Totally.
That's so much activity in such a one, it's a branch of positions.
Yeah, it really is. And if you think about it, I mean, when I was in Weed, we had a full-service police, fire, public works, administration. But because we were so small, we had, I believe, 32 full-time employees, and that was it. I mean, that's a lot of things to provide your citizens for. Just here in Brookings, I think we have about 55 employees. So, I mean, again, not a really big group for a city this size, but we are very effective, very efficient. The majority of our demographics, as far as the folks that work at City Hall and stuff, are mostly in public safety, our fire and police. That's generally every city I've been to. That's a big lion's share of the employees and the staff. And then you got the rest of the staff being public works, administration, and so forth.
And planning committee.
Yeah. We have and I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, we have a planning commission that meets monthly as well. I have a part of my public works department is also our community development, which they do the plan checks. They're the ones that send out a building official if you have some electrical work done that needs to be signed off, or plumbing. something substantial, they're the people that go out and make sure that those things are done properly. And then some people get a little irritated about that, but I was like, well, wouldn't you rather it be checked to make sure your house doesn't burn down?
Seriously.
Or your house doesn't flood if it's not
preventative.
Yeah, it's a very preventative stuff that happens. But so anyway, that staff is extremely important, very important cog in the wheel there, and to make sure that our citizens are, when they're having their house built from scratch, that those, your foundation, your electrical, your plumbing, your roof, if you have solar, all these things are done properly. So, because the last thing you want is something to happen, 3 years after you build your house and something substantially horrible goes wrong because nothing was really,
a landslide and just boom, it goes right into the ocean.
Exactly. You want to make sure you're building on a place where something like that's not going to happen. We can't guarantee everything because, as you know, Mother Nature has her own way of doing things.
True.
So, but we try our hardest to prevent that thing. And I've been involved. I often joke, I'm one of the few city managers in America that's probably been through literally every single possible natural disaster, with the exception of a hurricane. Although,
let's not talk about that because we do get hurricane
I
winds
understand
here.
that, so we don't want that to happen at all either. Knock on whatever wood is available. But no, so that's the other thing you got to get used to. That's the other thing that's part of being a city manager is being able to recover from natural disasters.
Yes.
And with the wildfires that I've faced in California and then back in Oklahoma, of course, tornadoes are huge. Flooding. I've been through some horrible floods. Ice storms are absolutely one of the worst because imagine what I tell everybody is, everybody always sees these pictures of these ice storms and everything's just all the trees just look magical. And until they get so much ice that the limbs start breaking and then the power lines come down and then it's a mess. And I've been through 3 ice storms, which none of them were fun because then you got to deal with all the debris from the trees and disposal. So so we have a lot of things on our plate and a lot of things that are expected from us.
That's way more than I ever thought. For some reason, I thought there was a bigger team.
No. And that's the other misnomer is a lot of people just think, oh, you're just going to have this big, plethora of support staff and people, and generally not. I mean, generally, the biggest city I worked for 7 years in a town of Midwest City, Oklahoma, and we had about 550 to 600 full-time employees, but we were a town of almost, I believe, 60,000 people too. So we had about 20,000 rooftops, 20,000 houses. So, much bigger area. I had about 100 police officers, 100 firefighters, and a couple hundred in my public works. Wow. So it was a substantial operation there. Yeah. But some of the bigger cities are, that's nothing compared to some of the other cities that are out there too. So, I mean, you look at a Portland or a Sacramento or some of these places, I mean, you're talking about substantial operations.
Very true. Yeah. Even though we're rural, we still have pretty big operation.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the most part, you want those operations to go off seamlessly. So your customers, and that's what, I instill with my staff, is every person that comes into Brookings, whether they're a resident or a visitor, they're our customers. And we want to make sure our customers are satisfied, and our customers, you're not going to be able to satisfy everybody, of course, but the majority of people, we can provide those services to where, and if we're falling short, we need to know about it.
Correct.
And that's the other thing is you have to have some thick skin to do this job.
Yeah.
So, and because it's not for folks that cannot take criticism. And I think part of my mantra to my staff, and I've also kind of mentored a few other people getting into this business. And I say, you don't have to be an effective city manager. You don't have to be an expert in law enforcement or firefighting or, engineering, planning. You just have to be an effective communicator. And the best city managers are the ones that can do that and that goes out and are able to talk to the public, able to talk to the council, able to talk to staff and visitors coming into the community as well. And if you can effectively communicate to them And the majority, and some of my staff have always kind of been in awe sometimes because they'll have a very angry citizen who demands to see me and says, I'm not going to leave until I talk to him.
Oh, yeah.
We've all been there.
Yep.
And I want to speak to the manager. And I'm that guy, unfortunately, sometimes. And I've brought people into my office. We sit down. If I have time, if I don't have a meeting or, something pressing, and let them just vent and get it off their shoulders. Some of these people have had frustrations for years. And then a lot of the time at the end of the conversation, I'll say, well, what would you like me to do to help? And sometimes I'll even say, you don't need to do anything. I'm just angry that nobody's listened to me. And then they're always kind of shocked because I say, that guy, Mr. Jones he's been mad for 10 years. And it's not that I have just some magical power. My ability to just listen and be an effective listener as well, an active listener, is important too. I mean, just like you right now, you're doing this radio show. If you just, had scribbled down some questions and wasn't paying attention to engage into what I'm saying,
right,
it would be not a great interview because you just basically be going down a list of questions and I'd be answering them, and it would be like a job interview instead of a radio interview. So those are the type of things I think too that have been very helpful in my career, is just being able to sit down and listen to folks and let them get it off their chest. And I think once you do that, you'll find that's the majority of what they're wanting to do is just vent.
Very true. To be present with them, engage with them, interact, and it's a lot of courage to get to that level to where they actually show up to speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And that goes in life. Like so many times that we don't speak up for ourselves and we hold it and we wait and we don't think that it's appropriate or nothing's going to happen and then by the time we finally get to that place to be able to share something or say something, there's probably an explosion. Yeah.
And that unfortunately happens at times. And so if I ever have those opportunities for like learning for a staff, even if I've gone to, because I was in essentially the hospitality industry, the food service. So
correct. Yeah.
I have a lot of patience, for those in that, that work in that field, because it's not easy. I watched my mom do it for over 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's backbreaking. It's tough. And I used to tell people, I've consoled coworkers in the kitchens before because of just being shredded by a customer and being
totally.
And I've been there too. I've had people just say the most god awful things to me, into my face, over a mistake on an order. I mean, come on, it's your mashed potatoes here we're talking.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, we put gravy on it. Don't kill me. We'll take it back and fix it. It'll be okay. We'll get you a new plate with no gravy.
It's true.
But some people just have such short fuses, especially in today's age. But if I even see it as this is off the beaten path, but I had several frustrations. Let's just say in Wairika, California, there's a store, a big blue box. They have thousands of them across the country. And I had some very frustrating experiences there. Yes. And one day I went to my car, and they had no shopping carts when you walked into the store. They were scattered all over the parking lot. Then when I went through the checkout, they had no bags. So I didn't bring any bags that day. So all my food had to go right back into the basket, even down to a little can of tomato sauce. And finally I went to my car and I said, so I went back into the store and I said, can I speak to the manager? And I found the manager, and we had a talk. And I said, first of all, when I asked one of your clerks, why are there no bags? She said that Governor Newsom has outlawed all shopping bags in the state of, and I said, that's not true. And he goes, no, it's not. And so anyway, and I said, well, there's something you could be telling your staff. Don't tell customers that the governor has outlawed shopping bags at said retailer. Anyway, and we talked for a little bit. Anyway, we talked, and I basically gave him some thoughts as a loyal customer, and that you guys really need to focus on better. And he kind of gave me a few excuses, and I kind of nodded my head and said, I think you can do better. Yeah. So anyway.
Constructive support.
Exactly. And because, like I said, we've all been there. We've all been very frustrated, but taking your anger out on some 17-year-old waitress or something is silly.
Yeah.
And you're not helping. if you want to talk to the manager, do it in a constructive way. And that's
Offset.
Offset. I didn't do it. I didn't scream.
Right.
I didn't become a viral video that afternoon. I could have easily if I had, if I had that short fuse, but I decided, no, this is a kind of a learning moment because I saw the manager a few times. He's a younger guy. I thought I'm going to talk to him, and I did. And whether it helped or not, I just needed to at least for my own conscience, let myself say my piece and move on, but not in a derogatory way.
No, It sounds like peaceful support, and we're all about that here on the Quality Living Show.
Absolutely. That's what I wanted, just a peaceful transaction.
Right.
Of picking up my food and taking it home and cooking it. So
of course.
That's it. That's all I wanted.
How about, there's a question we do ask everyone that comes on the show is, your version of what is quality living to you?
That's a great question. I personally, I think quality living is able, especially in my industry, is that work-life balance. That is a huge thing. So in my industry, unfortunately, in the past couple of months, I've read articles where city managers have retired, like at young age, like 62, and then pass away like 3 or 4 months later.
Oh, God.
Yeah, worked their entire lives to get to that magical 62 retirement and then pass away. So my whole deal is my quality of life is being able to figure out and not being consumed by what you do. I am a city manager, but that's not what I am. I do that for a living. I do that for, a job to provide money for my family. It's not something that I'm totally engulfed. So I have to have that outlet.
Nice.
And I think that is something very, very important for everybody, is to have that outlet, whether it be something creative, something like what you're doing with, yoga and meditation and those type of things. I think that's important as well. So very important.
It is. It's a fine balance. People think, I do all these things like, Amanda, you're crazy. I'm like, that has nothing to do with the fact that you need to balance your life and you need to have multiple activities. It's holistic.
It is.
So I appreciate that.
It is. Yeah. Right now I just auditioned for the It's a Wonderful Life. The production is, I was like, I want to try something. I haven't been in community theater in a long time. So
awesome.
Something I wanted to do that's not going to take an enormous amount of time, but it's just something I feel important. It's very important.
I love that. And we look forward to seeing that. We'll look out for it. And I want to thank our listeners. Thank you, Tim Rundel, city manager here in Brookings, Oregon, for having a moment to take out of his busy life and find this beautiful balance on the Quality Living Show. Thank you.
Thank you.